Tove Bångstad, which we've heard from before, head of Nordics at Amundi, Europe's biggest asset management firm, right? Yeah. And also Gabrielle Hagman. Gabrielle is here. Great, Gabrielle, head of institutional clients at Danske Bank Asset Management, and Pär-Jörgen Pärson, who is from Northzone, this early stage venture capital investment firm, famous for a couple of the world's most famous investments in tech. And Johanna, first let me just ask you. This is new research. What conclusion? I mean, we've touched upon the conclusions. What do you think we should? The people in this auditorium who work in the financial industry, what should they take home with them? What's the takeaway lessons, do you think, for this industry?
Oh, for the industry.
Would you want to rest on that, on the answer? And then I'll ask you guys. Gabrielle.
Yes.
First of all, one question that comes to mind here is that, Jesus, you have to marry the right guy.
Well, obviously.
Did you?
I think I did. I think this research is phenomenal. It's frustrating and not surprising at all, though. I think we need to be more long-term strategic in our choice of marriage. It sounds so unromantic, I know, but obviously it's really important. And at the end, if, like you said, if somebody asks us, what do you want in life? You want a career? You don't want to get divorced, if you can. You want a long-lasting marriage and maybe children, etc. Then you kind of need to think about that in the beginning, who you're going to marry. We talked about that before this panel, actually. It's about having a nice power balance at home, I think. Respect each other. So choose your husband or your wife in terms of how you respect each other. I think that will increase the long-lasting relationship. So back to your question. I hope I did. Right now, it feels like it.
Great. and Tove, from your long experience in the financial industry, what do you recognize this effect?
Well, I don't know if I recognize it, but of course I've seen it, and I think it is very difficult to combine a career. When you are really going high, and with family life and with children. And I would say, especially in Sweden, there's kind of all the kids should go to dagis. And, if you're a really good mom, you leave them at 9 and pick them up at 3, and you cannot make a career with those kind of working hours. So you really need to have help. And I think it's very, very difficult also because if you choose the right man who's also has a good career, he cannot leave at 3 either. So you need to have help at home as much as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. And not be ashamed of it.
Exactly. Mm. And I was going to say that every kid goes to dagis and you have to pick them up early. And if you don't do that, you are a really bad mom. And if you have help, then you are also looked at, can you not handle this by yourself? Mm. And I think that is difficult.
Or you could be a bad dad like me, throwing them off at 7:30 and picking them up at 17:30 or something, but just before they close, or even after they've closed.
Yeah, okay.
But you think, are you implying that moms are more are nicer to the kids than the dads? They leave early.
No, I'm not implying that, but I think that you need to have help at home to be able to have a career.
A prerequisite.
Because you cannot have a career kind of going to the top if you do not have help at home.
Marry a homemade or rent a homemade.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And Pär-Jörgen, tell us about Northzone. How is gender equality balanced there?
Yeah, we a little bit of a deviation from this subject, but we looked at each other 2013. We were basically 8 dudes of the same age, with the same socioeconomic background, and said that this is not going to work long term. So we started to think about how to change the firm over the long haul. And now today, 6 years later, we actually have gender balance, and we have female partners. We have the investment team is not only gender diverse, we have people from everything from China, India, Lebanon, Serbia, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Holland, and so we have we thought that was an important change, but that also included a lot of other consequences, including, okay, what kind of workplace are we offering women and minorities to come to work and thrive with us? And a part of that is actually that you expect to become a parent if you're not already a parent, and then you have to make it work for some parents who actually think it's incredibly important to come and pick up at 3, and some who like, I have one colleague in the New York office who, when her second born was in the 3rd month, newborn, says that, PJ, I got to get back to work. I'm going fucking crazy, So then she gets all the support that she needs in order to do that. And we think that it's her choice, and we have to sort of support and make that possible for her to make that choice. Equally, here in here in Sweden, we fill up the salary to the actual salary level when both females and males are home from to tend to the kids during the first year, and that is an incredibly important. Not only a single, but actually a practical way to solve this problem. And we hope that our best employees will stay with us for 15, 20 years, because it's very much a long-term business that we're in. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's like a business decision. It's not, because we're nice.
Tove?
When I was working for a bank, and in our management team, I was the only female, and all the guys had a wife that stayed at home. So they had all the support. I did not have a stay-at-home husband, which of course, and I had 3 kids, so it was kind of more difficult. So that's why, you really need to have help. Today, with this, in our industry, it's actually amazing in Sweden that we fill up kind of the pay gap when you are on parental leave. And today, if I have a guy or a girl that I'm going to employ, that are newly married, I know that they will both stay at home half of the time, because people do share today. But the change is when they come back. Then usually the woman wants to work less, like 80%, because she wants to pick up the kid from dagis and things like that.
And what do you do then? Because I think as a leader...
What I do, I say no.
Good.
You cannot do that. And then they say, but I need to pick up my kid from dagis. Well, Kalle and Olle, they also pick up the kids from dagis. Not a single one of them have come into my office and asked to work 80%.
Exactly.
So you're saying that more women come to you and ask that because they don't want to have bad conscience going.
Exactly, absolutely.
But the guys don't, they just leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my experience.
Mm-hmm.
My same experience.
and Gabrielle, what do you do as a leader to get a more balanced, gender balanced culture at your work?
Exactly, because to the first point of today's conference, obviously culture is really, really important, and it's not just for the women in the industry, it's also for the male, because we need to change the total culture and we want to attract the modern man. So that's what we want to have, and that will also attract the female talents. So it's a combination. We need the new culture to also attract the modern men who will stay at home or be the more equal partner in private life, but also at work. So I think that's also, we talk a lot, we need a culture to attract women, I mean, in my team, as a leader, to your question, to be honest, I have more men than female in my team, which is unfortunate. But a lot of young men who has become fathers over the last couple of years, they all stayed home around 9 months. At one time, I had 3 people at home at the same time. That was tough. But very, very good incentive and inspirational for the rest of the bank. I mean, I work at a big bank. We get a lot of interest from different parts of the bank to come and work with us.
And do you feel support from above in the bank to
yes and
make
no.
this culture work?
Honestly, who is here? No, but honestly, it's sometimes it's a fight that I have to take, but I'm happy to do it because I think it's so important to not just gender equality in terms of, because it's a nice thing. It's also to find the best talents that we have in our industry. So we have to do it.
And Tove, I know you started a network with the same name as this conference.
Women in
Women in
Finance.
Finance.
Yeah.
Could you tell me why did you start it? What was it that made you?
I started it because when we had events at the bank, it was always kind of ice hockey, football, go-karts. And the female clients and prospects, they came maybe once or twice, and usually there were only 1 or 2 of them. And they really did not feel included in the group. So I decided to start to arrange events only for female clients and prospects. And what I realized in doing this, that actually the women, they did not know each other. Not even if they worked in the same firm, because they were on different floors. But all the guys, they always knew each other. Even though you worked for SEB or Nordea or Handelsbanken or Danske, they all knew each other because they took time to network, and females do not take time to network. And that, I think, it's very, very important. Guys are very good at networking and promoting each other. And also I think that we, as women, if I'm to promote Gabriella, I feel that I need to kind of really know that for the next 20 years she will perform. But if a guy kind of promotes Pär-Jörgen, he's okay, meet with Kalle here, and then I'm off.
It's not your responsibility.
It's not my responsibility. And I think that's something that we really need to kind of adapt.
Okay.
Network and promote each other.
And Pär-Jörgen, have you seen that within your industry? I'm curious, when it comes to these startups, traditionally it's been a guy's thing. Oh, you have this techie programmer, you have this business guy, and they happen to be guys. Why?
Well, that has certainly been the case for quite some time, but I think we have seen a dramatic change over the past 5 years. We complained, intensively about the lack of women in the startup ecosystem 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it was actually hard to even find companies to fund where there was a female co-founder. Now, today, I think there is a totally different scene. Just over the past 4 months, I think we have agreed to invest in a total of 5 companies, of which 4 of them have female co-founders. That would have been like unthought of just 5 years ago.
What has changed?
I think it is that the startup ecosystem is more dynamic and it's more responsive to what is actually required to what kind of sort of work environment you're offering, and also the perception of fairness. I think that is at least how we have interpret the whole idea of diversity, is that if it's not a fair setting that you're working at, then that fairness probably only applies to the middle-aged guys. But if you sort of broaden the perspective, what is fair for the entire population of potential employees. And then you design systems to make sure that that fairness is understood and also reviewed and incented. Then you get a broader set of people to get interested. And I think that's what had happened with the startup ecosystem. Now, Spotify is not a startup anymore by any means, and neither is Klarna or iSettle. Those are very demanding environments to be in, but I think most of those environments are perceived to be fair. So a woman who wants to make a career in those companies, they feel that they are not being sort of put at a disadvantage just because they're women. And I think if you also look at the fact that they are diverse on a more in a wider perspective, you see nowadays when you walk into the Spotify office, there are 20, 30 nationalities. Going back 20 years, you would be happy to hear someone speaking Swedish and perhaps English.
Okay, so that's
I think you in the startup world, you have moved much faster because you saw that there was for the business it was not good to have these kinds of homogeneous groups.
Yeah.
So when Jonas was saying that it takes time, really.
But just a comment. So this Monday was the Gazelle Gala, right? And I think it was over 90% of the award winners was men. Why is that?
Yeah, well, we could turn it back to Pär-Jörgen, who probably knows. Because in the startup industry, they take the venture capital.
Well, actually,
is it like 1% that goes to?
I don't want to piss on the Gazelle here because I think it's actually a pretty poor measurement when when you're going on when you're measuring growth the way and success the way they do because none of our companies are on those lists and I think that's when you see like building and construction companies being at the top of the list, that's probably not very diverse. So I think that there is a lot still to be done in the startup ecosystem, but there is an understanding of the problem, and I think there's stuff being, specifically done about it. There is a very strong focus from the journalists at both Breakit and the Digital on how we are, living up to our promise to actually invest in teams that are diverse. Last year was 25% of the money that went into teams with at least one co-founder. That is still, I think, far lower than it should. It should actually be 100% because I think that is the ideal. The 100% of the team should be diverse and have gender diversity. So we're still far off, but I think we see the value of it.
And what specifically is the value? How do you explain to someone who doesn't give a damn about gender equality that you should direct your money towards businesses that are not only men starting up and running?
I think that there is more and more data now being shown that the diverse teams are performing better, and the sort of the test is so brutal when it comes to startups because if you don't raise capital, then you die. If you don't find customers, then you die. If you mistreat your employees, you die. Everything is so radical in that sense. And now it has become clear to pretty much all the participants in the ecosystem that, when you look at the founder team and you see dudes with the same age and the same background, you say, how are these going to be successful in the recruiting market? How are they going to really shine in front of investors and investors that are like us, more diverse? Our female investment managers, they ask the same questions as I do in that regard. So I think it's happening fast for market pressure purposes.
going back to this networking thing, Gabrielle, I know that you and Tove know each other.
Yes,
I
we
hope
do.
you have recommended each
We
other
know each other.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but the startup scene is one new scene. You are working within a more an older industry, the financial industry, going through a huge change as well, of course. But is it fair to compare the two? Do you think, or do you have some within the financial industry something that is working against you?
More men, and men promote men, and network with men. I think that's why we are in.
And how
in
break
this.
that, Tove? How do you break that vicious circle?
I think everyone in this room can do what they do. I actually heard a story the other day. There was a big deal that a lot of investment banks were competing on, and they came into the room to present to the client. And from one firm, there was 5 guys coming into the room, sitting down, and then the client said, "Okay, I think we are done here." And they were, well, we have not yet started. 5 guys, no, thank you.
Okay, that's
So
a sign of change.
They lost the deal even before starting. I think that's a sign, because the client did not feel that they could really deliver.
Gabrielle, do you see any signs of change that you would like to share, or something you would wish?
I mean, I do. So I represent a Nordic bank, and I would say Sweden is in the forefront, to be very transparent. But I see a change, but I think we need to...
Compared to the Danes, that's what you wanted to say.
Now you're speaking. I'm not even speaking. But we're really, as a firm, we're really trying hard. I'm actually involved in one of our kind of headquarter projects on this culture change and empowerment and diversity. So being in the forefront in a Nordic bank is quite exciting. But I see a change, and not just in terms of we need to be more female in. We need a different culture to set the scene. And as I said before, we also want to attract the modern men, so the modern people. Period. And I see going forward, comparing us to startups, we kind of have to, because if we look at our industry, it's going to be digital. It's already kind of there, but we're getting even more. And we need to find that talent. And coming back to our dialogue before about picking up 3 o'clock, etc. I mean, FaceTime is dead, I think. It should be anyway. And I think we all, as people in this industry, needs to be very firm to our managers, regardless of where you are, that this is really important. It's scary when you're young, but I think we really have to. And as leaders, we have to be open for that.
Pär-Jörgen, when you went from being 8 guys to now having a gender balance within the firm when it comes to recruitment, how did you go about? What instrument did you use?
Yeah, so we were first we didn't think that there was something actually wrong with the funnel, so we had to create a funnel that we had at least 50-50 in terms of candidates to review, and we got some. We worked with some recruiters who sort of thought that was like just we were paying lip service to an idea, and they came with candidates that were clearly out. They were not even seriously considering joining us. So we really had to work with the recruiters to understand that no, we want those who have that kind of a passion to spend the next 15 years working with startups, and then we also started to look at how we were communicating, and we communicated initially very ineffectively on what kind of working environment it was, like more sort of almost as you were referring to here, not soccer games and stuff like that, but more like war metaphors and stuff like that, which doesn't work for
Or
for
football
women.
football
Yeah,
metaphors.
Right, yeah. So we started to question our own way of communicating. Was the first one, and the second was to make sure that all right. The first few recruitings will be crucial because if we lose these women and they lose confidence in our ability to promote them within, then we will never be successful with their sort of successors. So it was important for us. We have now 2 women who came from the first crop of 3. Who made it to partner level. So I think in a way we were lucky because now we have those internal role models that show very clearly to the 50-50 funnel that you can actually make it at Northzone. It has happened more than once, and there are plenty of female peers in the group. And then what we do is that when we take out the final 10 that each of the partner get to interview, those 10 are actually not, has no sort of gender specific requirements. So we need to have 50-50 in the funnel, but then the final 10, we don't care if they are women or men or gender, non-binary. For that matter. And then what has happened in reality was that out of our 6 latest recruiting, 5 of them have been women. And that has been totally sort of because we found the right people.
But I think what you did there, you as partner or management, you really decided this is what we are going to do, and you had a plan.
Yeah.
And you did it, like step by step.
Johanna, of what you've heard here, as a researcher, do you hear things where you can find scientific support for it, or is it anecdotal evidence, as you like to say?
Oh, I'm really curious about the conversation about work culture and organizational culture. How specific can we get? That would be very interesting to me. The language is very interesting. Discussion about role models. I think 2 kind of recent research results that interest me a lot take a look at the way groups work within organizations, specifically that say that the 4 of us were to work in a group on a joint output. We don't know exactly who did what. In that type of situation, recent research shows that women tend to underestimate how much they contributed to a group output, and people that view that output also tend to underestimate how much women put into it. So that is a big, problem. I mean, when it comes to fairness, it's important to get that right. And then the other type of research looks at promotable and non-promotable tasks. So in any group, we can give some people things to do that are more conducive to a career, and some other people get to maybe do documentation or more supportive roles. And how you divide these tasks within groups has also been shown to be very gender unequal. And that goes back to role models versus supporters. I think there's less, or actually I haven't seen that much support in research that role models matter very much. What seems to matter a lot is those supporters among the men, seniors in the company. So if I'm a man, I'm going to be, oh, you, woman, I see that you contributed a lot to this group work. Or I'm going to give you some of these tasks that develop the skills that you need to get to the top tomorrow, to try to correct some of these group work mechanisms at the lower levels, consciously, like be aware of those processes of unfairness when women and men work together in groups.
Finally, Johanna.
I also think that I totally agree with you there, but I also think that it's also on us as women, because usually we work a lot, but we don't really tell our bosses what we do. But guys are really good at telling what they've done, and oh, look, I'm gonna bring in this client, and oh, look what I did here. So I think we really need to, because don't think that your boss sees what you do, because we are so busy with all sorts of things. But just take time, like once a month, and have a short meeting with your boss and tell him or her what you do.
Good piece
I
of
think
advice.
that's a very good advice.
I just wanted to finally ask you, Johanna, shortly tell us something about your current research, which could also be interesting for the topic of the day.
Yeah, so that might connect with the culture question, because we have a big project on sexual harassment in the on the labor market. And of course, sexual harassment can be everything from inappropriate touching to the sort of verbal, non-sexual statements, like in academia, like, oh, women are not as intelligent as men, so women are not really as good at being economics professors. It's these stereotypes about women not matching some requirements of the jobs that we're thinking of. Okay, so something that you see in the data is that when women start climbing the career ladder, sexual harassment tends to increase rather than decrease. So you might think that in the future, okay, women get more power, that's going to be used to stop sexual harassment against them. But what you tend to see is rather the opposite, that at least like when women start getting leadership at lower levels, they can now be harassed both by junior people, but also they enter into like groups, meetings with maybe high-profile clients, meeting with even higher management, and in these settings there tends to be a lot of harassment going on. So this connection between being promoted and your work, like the culture or the environment that you meet, I think is very interesting.
I did promise to let a question in here, if you made a mental note of that, before we take the coffee break. Someone raised their hand before, or are you... No questions as for now. Then let me thank you very much, Gabrielle, Pär-Jörgen, Tove and Johanna.